Hey everyone, it's Jananie and welcome back to my channel, This Story Ain't Over. Today I am really excited to bring you yet another personalized book recommendations video. So I've done two of these before, I believe, and they were so much fun. Basically, I asked you guys on Instagram to send me a book, movie, TV show, trope that you wanted to see a similar book to, and now I'm going to recommend you something based off of your answers. This time around, I feel like you guys threw me a lot of curveballs, but I tried my best to find the books that I had read that I felt most fit the things that you were asking for. So I have about 30 odd recommendations today, but out of the answers that you guys gave me, I was only able to answer maybe 15 of them. So there's definitely some that I couldn't even think of recommendations for. And that sort of ties into our sponsor of today's video, which is Likewise. I think we've all been in the position where we're trying to find the perfect book for our taste, or we finish something that we really love and we want to find the next great book. Or maybe you're someone who watches a lot of TV and you've been scrolling through Netflix trying to find the perfect next thing to watch. Out of the answers that you guys submitted on Instagram, there was definitely a few that I was like, this sounds so cool. I wish I had a book to recommend for this. And I feel like this is where I would turn to something like Likewise. So Likewise is basically one of the best recommendation apps that you can ever find. It's powered by a combination of smart technology and recommendations from real people. That way it gives you the best recommendations possible. All you have to do is start by telling Likewise what your favorite genres and books are, and then from there it will give you some personalized recommendations, just like I'm doing today. I found quite a few great books from Likewise. One in particular off the top of my head is The Midnight Library. This is a book that I found the first time that I did a video with Likewise, and I had personally just been looking for something that was like quick and a short read and slightly motivational, and this was definitely that book. I know some people have mixed feelings about this book, but I really enjoyed it at the time, and I think Likewise really came through in a clutch. So Likewise has quite a few different features that help you find recommendations and make sure that you never run out of books to read. One of their awesome features is groups, where you can explore and join conversations with people who love the same things you do. One of my personal favorite things about Likewise is the Today cards, which are daily recommendations. Every day users get personalized recommendations and lists that they can swipe through on the Today tab. It's kind of like Tinder for books. Another fun feature is lists, where you can easily organize your TBR or books that you've read into these nice lists that either match a specific trope that you like or are your favorite books or whatever you're really feeling. And then the last feature that I want to talk about is Ask, which is actually the coolest feature ever. If you're looking for something specific that doesn't seem to be on any list or any recommendation, then you can actually post an ask and ask the community on Likewise to give you recommendations. That way you get real recommendations from real people, which is also a really nice community aspect. Another awesome thing about Likewise is that you can save all your favorites in one place and never lose track of the books that you want to read for your TBR. So with all of that said, and if you're here for personalized recommendations, I definitely think you should go check out Likewise. Click the link in my description and download the app. The app is 100% free, and you can also follow me on the app and get recommendations from me as well. Thank you so much to Likewise for sponsoring this video, and now let's get back to the 30 plus book recs that I have for all of you today. Okay, so the first recommendation that I have for you is for someone who asked for something similar to ATLA, which I'm assuming you're meaning Avatar: The Last Airbender, because what else could you mean? I'm a huge Avatar fan, and I was trying to rack my brain to think of books that sort of gave me similar vibes or had similar plot lines or similar magic systems, and there's two that I came up with, but they're both adult fantasies that are slightly dark and definitely more adult. So Avatar: The Last Airbender is obviously like a children's show that a lot of other people watch, but I just want to preface here that these two books are definitely not for children. So those two books are The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang and She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. The reason I mention both of these is because they're both Asian-inspired fantasies, so they definitely have like the vibe of ATLA. But another aspect to both of these that I think is similar to ATLA is the aspect of spirituality and sort of a magical power that asks you to separate yourself from the material world, which is something that Aang definitely has to face in the show. Both these books also have really epic casts and really large moving parts and sort of like wars going on, so I think that is also reflective of ATLA. And I feel like if you like the aspect of ATLA where it's like this grand and epic story of this one person, then I feel like you will probably appreciate the epicness of both of these. She Became the Sun is the first book in a series, and the rest of the books haven't come out yet, so I can't really say how it ends. I will say for Poppy War, though, it is a lot more bleak and dark and definitely has a lot of triggers in its first book, so just be aware of that. It's definitely not like the happy-go-lucky thing that ATLA is sometimes, but both of these do have some like fun and funny bits and like great banter between some of the main characters, so I feel like it does reflect the main characters of ATLA quite well. Alrighty, the next person asked for Peter Pan retellings, and I haven't read this book, but I have been meaning to pick it up for a while now, and that is Darling by Kay Ancrum. The reason I was interested in this particular retelling is that it takes some of the problematic aspects of Peter Pan and sort of flips them on their head, and is a lot more diverse as well, and sort of gives agency to some of the indigenous characters in the story. And I also believe it has like a little bit of a dark twist where Peter Pan may not necessarily be our good guy, which is a take on Peter Pan that I absolutely love so much. Kind of similar to, if you've ever watched the show Once Upon a Time, I believe Peter Pan in the show is slightly sinister, which I really enjoyed. So yeah, this gave me those vibes. If you're looking for a Peter Pan retelling, this might be one for you. Alright, the next person asked for wholesome friends to lovers, so I'm assuming nothing really adult romancy that has like explicit content, and one that is mainly focused on just like this really wholesome bond. So the book that came to mind for me was definitely All My Rage by Sabaa Tahir. This book is definitely a heart-wrenching and heartbreaking book, but the friendship in this book is so beautiful, and just the progression of the relationship is really beautiful as well. They definitely have some ups and downs and highs and lows, but through it all, the main characters, Noor and Saul, have been friends since they were little kids, and so I feel like it's like a really strong bond that you can't really destroy, and the way that they care for each other and really look out for each other was just so beautiful. So yeah, if you're looking for a friends to lovers that is like really wholesome, this one is definitely the one. On a similar vein, there's a couple more of you who also asked for friends to lovers recommendations. You just didn't say the word wholesome. And one of you actually said like friends to lovers done right. So this might be subjective to my taste, but I know a lot of people love this book, but I also know quite a few people who didn't end up enjoying this one. But for friends to lovers, I would definitely recommend People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. This involves a pair of friends who have been friends for, I think, 10 years. They met in college, and every summer for the past decade, they've been taking one glorious week of vacation. And each time they go to a different place, and they have been platonic through it all, but everything changed 2 years ago when something went wrong on one of their vacations, and they haven't spoken for about a year. And so the book actually starts when they're trying to repair their relationship and go on one last vacation together. But interspersed with the main storyline, we get flashbacks to the previous vacations that they've taken together and the previous states of their relationship. I feel like this was a really good friends to lovers, but I can see how some people might see this as like not really friends to lovers, in the sense that you can tell that they held a candle for each other since the beginning, but it's like they always missed their timing kind of thing. But I do feel like they were genuine friends as well. So this one is slightly different from All My Rage, I feel like, because this one they are like young kids when they become friends, and sort of they grow up into being lovers. But this one, they just keep missing their timing, and they are like not courageous enough to take that extra step to ruin their friendship and potentially start a romance. So regardless of what you're feeling, I hope that one of these will work for you for friends to lovers. All right, the next person asked for more stationery shop vibes. So this was the book club pick for March for our Read and Color book club, so I think that's probably why this was on your mind. But this book is basically a historical fiction romance with a pretty tragic love story, lots of pining, lots of angst, and sort of misunderstandings that rip a couple apart. So I feel like if you're looking for something similar to a stationery shop, you probably want a historical fiction, one that has a pretty strong romance, and one that sort of has a situation where the characters can't necessarily be together because of larger circumstances. So the first comparison is one that I've talked about before, which is Next Year in Havana by Chanel Cleeton. This one is set in a similar revolutionary moment in Cuba. It follows two different timelines. This one also has a romance that is doomed from the start. I will say that the romance in this one isn't as great as the one in Stationery Shop, but this definitely will give you all the feels, and also has a lot of the political aspects and conversations that happen in the Stationery Shop as well. Similarly, Chanel Cleeton's other book in that same series, When We Left Cuba, is also very similar and has also a similar sort of plot point to the Stationery Shop, which I don't really want to say and spoil things, but this also gives you similar vibes and sort of a situation larger than the characters themselves that sort of rips them apart. This one also has a stronger focus on the female main character, which I think is sort of similar to Stationery Shop as well. And then the last thing I would recommend if you like Stationery Shop is probably The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This one could be a hit or miss depending on your reading taste, but I feel like it should be a hit if you liked The Stationery Shop. This is technically a historical fiction because it follows the life of this like fictional Hollywood star and her 7 marriages that she went through and her husbands, and also the one love that she held on to through all those decades. This one also has like shocking twists similar to The Stationery Shop, as do these 2 books as well. And it definitely has that drama of like not being able to be with the one that you love. All right, the next person simply asked for some good queer fantasy. So I have quite a few recommendations for this one. First, I have the Sapphic Trinity that came out, I think, last year. So we have She Who Became the Sun, sapphic romance in this one. It's a smaller part of the story, but definitely a really great romance. And then we've got The Jasmine Throne, which also has a sapphic romance at the forefront of the story. It definitely takes a while to get started, but there are some really beautiful, tender moments between the main characters, Melanie and Priya, that just like leave you breathless. So I'm excited for more of them in the rest of the series. And then we've also got The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke. This was definitely a slower read, but it's also got a sapphic romance to it, which really affects the plot of the story as well, which I thought was interesting. And this one also involves like a bit of a power imbalance between the 2 main characters. So I know all 3 of those were sapphic fantasies. The next one is a personal favorite of mine, and it actually happens to have some asexual rep. That's Kaigei by Vaishnavi Patel. Really fantastic book, similar to Circe by Madeline Miller. It follows the life of a vilified queen from the Hindu epic Ramayana, and in this sort of reimagining, Kaigei is asexual. Loved it. It's never like named on page, obviously, because like the words aren't there for it in this sort of like historical mythological world, but it's definitely a prominent part of the story and sort of affects Kaigei's decisions, and you can see it in her character throughout the book. And then I also want to mention a fantasy that's like slightly a fantasy, slightly a sci-fi, and that is The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. This is one of my favorite reads of this year, and part of that is because of the diversity in the book. It has a lot of BIPOC characters, but out of the like 5 to 6 main characters in the book, 3 of them are queer in some way, which I absolutely loved, and I also loved how all the representation was very like intersectional. So definitely one to pick up if you're looking for some queer representation in SFF. On the note of The City We Became, the next person asked for multiverse/parallel universes, and in The City We Became, it's not super obvious at the beginning, but as you move through the book, it starts to become apparent that there might be some sort of multiverse parallel universe thing going on. Also, whoever asked this, I absolutely love the fact that you asked this, because I too would like more books that involve multiverses or parallel universes. I feel like we see it a lot in movies, but I want to see it in a book. But yeah, so The City We Became definitely has like an aspect of that. And then I don't want to say too much because it might become a spoiler, but there is potentially an aspect of this in Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor. This is the 2nd book in the Stranger the Dreamer duology. That's all I'm gonna say because I don't want to spoil things, but yeah, there might be an aspect of a multiverse in this. All right, the next person submitted an answer where they said, I'm 23 and I'm struggling to find a book for me. I absolutely love that this was asked because I feel like this is a common problem for people where they have grown up reading a lot of YA and that was what was familiar to them when they were younger. But as they get older, they're like, okay, I don't really see myself in these books anymore. I need something older, but you're not really sure where to start in adult. So personally for me, I feel like what has worked is finding books in the adult space that have characters that start out younger. So whether that's like an epic sci-fi fantasy where the main character starts out like very, very young and they grow up throughout the book. So Red Rising by Pierce Brown, the character is like 16, I think, at the beginning. The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, the character is like, I think, a child, maybe like 10 years old at the beginning. And then She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan, same thing. The main character is about like, I think 10 or something at the beginning of the book. But in all 3 of these, it's like an epic story of this one main character who sort of grows up and finds their destiny. Oh, and another one I forgot to mention is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This one also features characters who are very young at the beginning, growing up and finding their destiny. And then another way to approach this is to actually find books where the main characters are in like the university age-ish or like recent grad age. There's quite a few adult books that actually have characters like that, which is around like the 23, early 20s age. So if you're looking for something literary like that, you might want to try Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. If you're looking for a romance that's in that like early 20s age, mid 20s age, then I would try People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry or The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This one follows a grad student, so it's definitely sort of relatable for that age. And then this one, the flashback scenes of the characters from their like previous vacations, some of those actually take place when they are in university and like slightly after graduation. So I feel like it's quite relatable. And then again, in this like university college age, you might want to try some dark academias and like mystery thrillers. So If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio, or The Atlas Six by Olivia Blake, which features 6 different college age or like recent grad age people who have magical powers who are invited to this like Alexandrian society to compete to become new sort of caretakers in the society. And then I would also say In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. This one actually takes place in college for part of it, and then the other part of the storyline is where the characters are at a reunion and sort of reflecting back on their days in college and the murder that occurred. And then the last couple of recommendations I'll make for someone who's 23 struggling to find a book, I would maybe try a story that involves like a long look at one person's life, something like Kaigei by Vaishnavi Patel or The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Both of these sort of follow one main character throughout their entire life and sort of the grand epic journey that their lives take them on. So definitely ones to check out. All right, the next person gave me a couple moods, I think. So they asked for something that's not quite spring, not quite winter anymore. Something that is like sort of ennui, definitely moody, maybe romantic. So this was a lot of things going on here, but the three books that sort of came to mind with this sort of like ennui aspect to it, so like this boredom and apathy, were these three books. So Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney, definitely sort of a bleak look on life and also some flawed characters, but also this like aspect of apathy and boredom. Same with If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha, follows multiple female characters in Korea and sort of the beauty standards in Korea as well, but also has this aspect of like apathy and boredom and ennui, I think, which I found really interesting. And then the book that quite definitely embodies some aspect of ennui is Days of Distraction by Alexandra Chang. This book is part fictional story, part memoir, and it follows a woman who worked in tech who ends up leaving her job and moving sort of across the country with her boyfriend and is sort of experiencing a lot of things and sort of not really sure of her life. And it touches on a lot of topics which I found interesting, but the overall sort of feeling of it is this apathetic boredom as the main character is trying to figure out her life, I think. And it is also one of those books that doesn't give you any resolutions at all at the end, which I also really enjoyed. So yeah, this was definitely a hit for me, but I think it definitely depends on the person. And yeah, all three of these were definitely very, very moody. The next person asked for mythology, but not Greek mythology. And I'm just gonna keep shoving this book in your face, but that is Kaigei by Vaishnavi Patel. Again, follows Hindu mythology and specifically the epic, the Ramayana, and takes one of the vilified characters of the epic and puts her at the forefront and tells her story, and that's Kaigei. All right, the next person asked for something that I absolutely love, which is a book that is sad but still leaves you with a hopeful feeling at the end. So I have a few for these. I mentioned The Stationery Shop before. This one is definitely a sad book because there's very sad things that happened, and you will definitely be sobbing by the end of this book, I guarantee it, but it also has a hopeful aspect to it, I personally think. I also mentioned All My Rage by Sabatir. This one is definitely a sad book. Very, very hard things happen to our main characters and you will feel very hard for them. And this will also leave you sobbing and in tears by the end, but I do feel like it has a hopeful ending as well. In terms of more YA, I feel like Tara Mafi with her YA contemporaries definitely does this. They are sad books, but they have hope at the end, which I appreciate, and these are some of my favorite YA contemporaries. This one is An Emotion of Great Delight, and this one is A Very Large Expanse of Sea. And then the last one I would recommend for this like sad but hopeful at the end book is Marriage of a Thousand Lies by S.J. Sindhu. This one is definitely quite a sad book. There are a lot of sort of difficult things that the main character is going through. She's a lesbian woman in a fake marriage with a man to sort of appease their traditional families, and she's secretly in love with her childhood best friend who's about to get married. And so there's like this huge tension between who she is and sort of what she is forced to present herself as to her family. The experience of reading this book was very deeply painful, also because it was just very relatable if you are someone from a South Asian background. But despite all of that, I feel like it does end off with a quite hopeful outlook. All right, the next person asked for South Asian books, please. I appreciate the please, and I'm so excited to talk about more South Asian books. One day I will do a whole dedicated video for these. So a few of these I already mentioned before. So All My Rage by Sabatir, she's a Pakistani author, and the main characters in the book are Pakistani immigrants. Marriage of a Thousand Lies, I also talked about. This is by a Tamil Indian author, I believe. She's also Canadian, and the main characters in the book are Tamil. And then I also talked about The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri. This is set in an Indian-inspired fantasy world, and the two main characters are obviously South Asian as well. And then, of course, I can't go without mentioning Kaigei again by Vaishnavi Patel. And then in terms of books that I haven't mentioned yet, there is Blue Skin Gods by S.J. Sindhu. I haven't read this one yet, but it starts in Tamil Nadu, India, and then it takes the character, I think, to the States as well. And then a favorite of mine from the past couple years is The Henna Artist by Alka Joshi, and this is set in the 1950s in Jaipur in India. And then a couple that that I haven't read yet, there is A Passage North by Anuk Arudpragasam, and this one is set in northern Sri Lanka and is actually written by a Sri Lankan author. And then one of my favorite South Asian books I've ever read is The 11 Lives of Rukhsana Ali by Sabina Khan, and this follows a Bangladeshi main character who's also Muslim, and she's also queer, she's lesbian. And it was this whole intersection of identities and really tapped into the difficulties that queer people face in the South Asian community. So really love this, and it's also a YA. Someone just simply asked for dark academia, so I mentioned these three before when I was talking about books for 23-year-olds. So If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio, again, Shakespearean actors at this like academy, murder mystery, definitely follows that format from The Secret of History where it's like a character looking back on what happened. Same thing with In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. They're at a reunion and then they're looking back 10 years ago at what happened and how their classmate died and who killed them. This one also has like a lot of secrets between the main characters, like a lot of drama, which I also really loved. And then The Atlas Six is a bit of a stretch for dark academia because there isn't really a murder involved, but I think it does deliver on a lot of the same vibes if you are into that, and it's also magical. Alrighty, and then the final personalized book recommendation that I have to make is for someone who asked for Slow Burn Yearning like in Bridgerton Season 2. So this one was definitely hard. I feel like there's nothing quite like Bridgerton Season 2 in the sense of how dragged out the yearning is, but also the way that they start with this like hate to love situation. However, I'm gonna go and throw it back to the queen herself, Jane Austen, to Pride and Prejudice. I feel like if you like the yearning, if you like sort of their change in opinion of each other and the way that they start out hating each other and then end up falling for each other, Pride and Prejudice is the blueprint for that story. Darcy and Elizabeth start out hating each other and slowly their opinion of each other changes, but it definitely has that moment in like the middle of the book that I feel like is similar to Bridgerton Season 2 where like they both hate each other, but Darcy's like, I can't control myself, I need you to marry me even though like here are the 10 things wrong about you and your family. And I feel like it's a very similar vibe to Antony in Bridgerton, so I think you should get the same vibes from Pride and Prejudice, but just be aware that it's definitely less steamy than Bridgerton. Alrighty, and with that said, those are all of the personalized book recommendations that I have today. I'm sorry if I didn't get to your ask on Instagram. There's a lot of them, and there's also a lot of them that like I just didn't even have a recommendation for. So as I said at the beginning of this video, definitely go check out Likewise using the link in my description, download the app, and grab some recommendations. It's 100% free, and you can follow me on the app, and I think it's definitely a place to get some recommendations that maybe even I can't give you. I had a lot of fun doing this as always, and I tried to give you a lot more like newer books that I had read that weren't like the same books that I'd recommended before, so hopefully you found something that you want to pick up very soon. Thank you so much for watching as always and for submitting your asks for personalized recommendations, and if you haven't already, go follow me on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok. I post things like this, you know, these asks for questions and all of that on my Instagram a lot, and I also update you guys on things that I'm doing and what I'm reading on Twitter and TikTok. So definitely go follow those down below, and I will see you in my next video. So please remember that this story ain't over. Bye!